Welcome to the Alchemy of Business Show with your host, Steve Rodgers. The Alchemy of Business Show is a podcast that mixes practical, actionable business solutions with soulful insights for anyone seeking deeper meaning in their lives and greater success in their work. Steve will be featuring purpose-driven leaders from all walks of life and getting insight into their journeys from failures to triumphs. So tune in to transition, transform, and evolve in every dimension of your business and life. And now your host of the Alchemy of Business Show, Steve Rodgers.
Hello, everyone, and thank you very much for joining the Alchemy of Business Show. We appreciate you being here, whether you are listening on your iPhone, in your car, maybe you happen to be watching this on video online somewhere, but regardless, thank you very much for being here. This is where we are talking about wiser decisions, greater profits, and higher purpose. And those are great topics that blend into your personal life, your professional life, or anything you're trying to create on this planet. So welcome. I am very thrilled today to have our guest. We have someone who actually I'm affiliated with from not only being a friend and associate of mine, but also from a group that I'm a part of, from Marshall Goldsmith. Some of you may know Marshall Goldsmith. He's a pretty notable character and an amazing man who does a lot of stuff globally. And he created something called the 100 Coaches after he was looking to pay it forward in the world, after he's written numerous books, coached many CEOs throughout the world. And I met this gentleman, Mr. Rhett Power, who's going to be on the show today through this network. And we become friends. We're on masterminds together. He helps co-facilitate a accountability group that we're a part of. But Rhett is an amazing entrepreneur. He co-founded Wild Creations in 2007, which was a startup company with toys. Now, how can you not love a guy who helped build, create, and distribute toys? So I want to learn more about that. But in this company, he was the top 75 U.S. companies by the U.S. Chamber of Commerce. So I want to hear about his toys and how he got into playing with toys as an adult from a kid. He was also a finalist for the Ernst & Young Entrepreneur of the Year Award in 2011 and was nominated again in 2012. He was named one of the world's top 100 business bloggers in 2018. He's a phenomenal writer. I've read a lot of his stuff. And he was named the best small business coach in the United States. He's written for Inc. He's written for Forbes. He's also been named as the #1 thought leader of entrepreneurship by Thinker 360. He's also a fellow institute of the McLean Hospital and Harvard Medical School affiliate. Rhett is also a father and a husband and a global traveler. I'm going to talk to him about his global travel today. But he's also the co-founder of Courageous Leadership. And he takes the accountability of leadership, but also ties it into this word and this concept and this thinking and life living of being courageous. So we're going to talk a lot with him about that today. He also has a couple best-selling books, but one of his latest ones is called The Entrepreneur's Book of Actions. And we're going to learn more about his book, some of his magazine writings. And he can't talk a lot about it yet because it's kind of top secret, but he's been recently on a show that's been taped called 4 Days to Save the World. Now, man, we got to find out how he's going to do that, because does this world need some saving in some ways? Absolutely. So let's bring on Mr. Rhett Power. And here you go, Mr. Power, with a great name like Power. Welcome here.
Steve, thank you. What an introduction, man. I don't know that I can live up to all that, but we're going to give it a shot.
Well, isn't it funny when we read our bios sometime and we think about like how many years we've been on the planet and like a year or a decade, or then we go, wow, I really did do that. So right. You must be amazed when I'm like doing this going, wow, because even though it's cool, you actually did those things, right? So that's kind of very cool.
Yeah, they were all done with varying degrees of success, but
yeah.
Or not.
As life is, no doubt. Well, welcome, Rhett. Well, hey, let's talk about toys for a minute. So obviously you were born like we all were as a kid growing up. You had toys. You probably had a love of toys and sports and different things. So how did you grow from being able to play with toys as a kid to actually building a company that became very successful around toys?
Well, as most roads in our life are pretty curvy, there's not one straight line of a road that we all go down. Mine, took a lot of curves. I, after school, got involved with Clear Channel Communications, and I worked with Clear Channel for about 5 years, and then left to go in the Peace Corps. And after 2 years in the Peace Corps, we were in Central Asia. 9/11 happened, and so I stayed on with USAID. which is the U.S. government's development organization and agency, and worked in Central Asia to bring economic development to the post-Soviet Central Asian countries. We were also there combating terrorism, and the prevailing sort of wisdom at the time was that, if we help create jobs and we help create this more robust economy, then people wouldn't turn to terrorism and to extremism. And so that took me through 2005 and 2006. And then, I got that. One of the things I define my life by are these moments where I listened to what my gut was saying. I listened to what my intuition, or that little voice. We'll talk about the book later, about that little voice that's inside your head. I've listened to that voice, and I define that all. I talk about sometimes about quitting. I've quit a lot of different things, a lot of different careers to start others. And it was all because I was listening to that inner voice that said it's time to do something else. So I left USAID, and it wasn't just, I didn't have this vision of a toy company. What we decided we wanted to do was to start our own company. We wanted to grow something. We wanted to bring our management and our beliefs and our culture, the culture that we wanted to create in a company, to whatever it was we found. And so we looked and looked and looked, and we even found a dead body removal company that had a $3.5 million EBITDA, patents on body bags. But I just couldn't get excited. We looked at gutter companies and pest control companies. We looked at all kinds of companies to buy. And my lawyer brought me this little piece of paper. We were getting pretty frustrated. We couldn't find anything that we were excited about. And he brought me this piece of paper and said, if you buy this company, I'm going to disown you. This is a terrible company. And of course, that's the company we bought. And it was run horribly. It was a little one product toy company in Myrtle Beach, South Carolina. But we fell in love. We absolutely fell in love with the product. And we knew that we could scale it. We knew that we could grow it. We turned that product 2 years later into the toy of the year across the country.
Wow. Man, talk about what you just weaved in that summary there. Thank you very much. I mean, that you at a younger age were out looking at the global impact of what's happening in the world from some major issues. I mean, you're talking about terrorism, how to prevent attack or get people in understanding cultures, and then to toys, to profit, to following your gut and instinct. So there's a lot to unpack there, which I love. So one of the things I want to go back on is the follow your gut. Obviously, if you were courageous enough, which we're going to talk about courageous leadership in a few minutes, and you went to become in the Peace Corps and then traveled to these countries that a lot of people may not be open to being that adventurous, did you always have this follow your gut, this courageous kind of knowing, and then you defined it as you grew through these things that so let's talk a little bit about that following your gut and courageous on all of these things that you did. And I want to come back to some of those and unpack those particular projects.
I think my parents probably would have defined it. I mean, I did. I went over to Europe when I was 17. I went to Washington to be a Senate page when I was 17 again. My parents would probably call it this recklessness or this adrenaline junkie kind of thing. It's getting better as I get older. But I've always been willing to try anything and do anything and give it a shot. One of the things I guess maybe it scares me. Maybe it's a fear of mine. Maybe that's something that you and I should talk about. But it's a fear that drives me to say, I don't want to sit on my porch when I'm 85 and say, what could I have done? Or what didn't I do? Yes. Or why didn't I try that? And have those regrets. Like I just, that worries me. And so I don't want to have regrets.
And did it worry you from a very young age, or did it worry you as you became more of a mature adult? When did that worry start happening?
I don't know. I can't really identify it at 20. I think I was probably just seeking adventure, but I think deep down, I wanted to live. I wanted to live on my own terms. I think the way I look at it now is I've always wanted to live on my own terms and live in my own way, whichever way I thought was best for me. And I think that's probably where that comes from.
Got it. So thank you for sharing that. And I think you've instilled that. You have a couple boys, correct?
I do.
And I know you're a proud papa. I know we have a few pictures of your sons or some soccer stuff they or you do in here. So did you carry that that live life to the fullest, follow your passions, like your son's playing soccer or traveling the world with you or different things. So have you instinctually and with intent carried what you just said on to your children? Because you said my parents reluctantly, your parents reluctantly, like, oh my God, this Rhett guy, what the hell? Are you saying, come on, guys, be more adventurous or follow your gut or, too bad it's fearful, do it anyway? Are you parenting that way, like you're living as well?
I try to. I mean, we picked them up when they were 10 months, when my oldest was 10 months old, moved to Kazakhstan. I kind of feel like that's the best thing I can do for them is to give them, I wrote, it's interesting that you asked me that. I just wrote to my son's senior thing for his senior, the back of the yearbook kind of little blurb that you do.
Uh-huh.
I'm sure you've done those. And one of the things I said in there was, take everything that we've given you, the good and the bad, and learn from it. But from what we haven't taught you, have the courage to seek it out. And to me, that's what I want him to have, or both of them to have, is to have the courage just to seek and to learn and to be curious and to take life on head on, and be courageous enough to go out and live it on your own terms. Don't live the life you think I expect of you. Don't live the life that somebody else says that you have to live. Live your own life and do what you want to do so that you're proud at the end of your days that, there was a life of significance.
Wow. Well, I love that life of significance. So we're going to wrap up on that and come back from a quick break. But listeners or viewers, life of significance, toy companies, profits, learning how to make all this happen and learning about Rhett's book is something you should come back and listen to, I hope, because we're going to dig much deeper into this. So thank you, Rhett. And let's come back and talk about life of significance. Welcome back to the Alchemy of Business Show. We're here with Mr. Rhett Power. We're talking about global travel, raising kids, building companies, including toy companies. But we wrapped up on a topic about life of significance and wanting to create that. So, Rhett, let's jump back into that. We talked about a lot in a short amount of time on that first segment. But in this life of significance, you also tie that into courageous living. And I know you are a founder and running organization about courageous leadership. And I also know that you have a company that you've recently formed called Accountability Inc. So I like in this alchemy concept, because the name of the show is Alchemy. My name of my company is Alchemy. It's all about having this formula, all these different components that make this magic potion that works for you. And you were saying that as on the first segment for your kids or for, I'm sure, your clients. Everybody's different. Everybody has different passions and elements. So for you, how have you taken this learning of building companies and then this leadership practice that you do into courageous and accountability? So let's talk about molding those together, if we could, and how you've made your own alchemy of these things in your current work.
Well, I think the way I look at it is accountability and courage are prerequisites for anything that you want to do. They're prerequisites for change. They're prerequisites for for leading a company. I mean, when you look at what's happening in the world of business today, I mean, companies are dying and companies are getting disrupted. I mean, 52% of the Fortune 500 companies from 2000 are now extinct. I mean, in 2 decades.
Yeah, that's nuts.
In 2 decades, we've lost over 50% of those companies that were on the Fortune 500 list. And companies used to stay on that list for 75 years. And so we're just in this, and there's such a lack of courage. I mean, we could get into politics and to society, but there's such a lack of courage in society today, right? And so I think customers and, in our businesses, our customers are starting to demand that you be accountable, that you be responsible, socially responsible. I think, as we see this sort of this climate that's happening now, courage and accountability can really be your differentiation. It can be the thing that sets you apart from your competition. It can be the thing that's sort of your X factor. And I think what we want to do, at Courageous and at Accountability Inc. is help companies figure that out, figure out where their pain points are, figure out what their fears are, figure out what is Steve, you and I we got a little bit of gray hair, you less than me, but we've all seen companies. I mean, you've seen companies that you've worked in probably, and the companies that you've coached that are just they're in this state of paralysis.
Yes, correct.
Right. And that paralysis is because there's fear. There's fear of making decisions. There's fear of making that purchase, that equipment. There's that fear of maybe moving that person out because they're the top salesperson, but they're a jerk to work with. But their numbers are really good. So, there's fear of sometimes doing the right thing and the thing that's necessary. And so my job, I feel like, is a fear fighter. My job is to go out there and show them and give them a process to make decisions that take that fear out of that decision making.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, and I know processes are so important. And whether you're writing for blogs or Inc. magazine, or you're writing books, where I want to show your book in a few minutes and talk about that, processes are so crucial, and accountability. And in some cases, it almost seems like that's in opposition to courage and following your gut and all of that stuff, because you have to have instinct and you have to be right brain, left brain. So how do you, when you go into companies or with your clients, how are you bringing up both of these crucial topics to highlight with them, like on a scale of 1 to 10, how they are on courageous leadership from their perspective or their teams? And then on accountability, how are you using your own processes to uncover that within somebody? And then what processes can people go to right now to start taking action on either of those categories?
Great question. I think I'll start with this. Like, courage is a concept, and as a word, I think is often misunderstood, right? And I think people often think, well, courage doesn't apply to me. It applies to that fireman that's running into a burning building. It applies to that police officer. It applies to that fighter pilot or that soldier. And we think that we can't be compared, or that guy jumping out of the airplane. We just don't equate it to ourselves. Number two, we think courage is really risky, right? And we're risk averse. Typically, we're not wired for risk, right? We also think that courage is impulsive, right? We also think that courage can't be taught. So there are all these myths that surround this concept and this word. And what we do is, when we talk about process, we believe if you have the knowledge, faith, and action part, if you have all of these three components of what we call courage, then you can take the risk, you can take the fear, you can take the impulsiveness, you can take the whole idea that courage doesn't apply to us, and actually make courageous moves in your company and in some ways your life. But let's apply this to a company. So what do I mean by knowledge, faith, and action? Knowledge is, do I have enough knowledge to make a decision? Do I have the stats, the data, the right team in place? Do I have whatever the elements of that decision making are? Do I have all of that? And am I confident that this is the right decision?
Right.
Okay, if I've got that and I've got all that, and I say, yes, I've got the knowledge. And now, do I have the faith? Now, the faith is not religious faith. It's the belief that, and does my team believe in this decision, right? Is everybody or most of the people behind the decision that we're going to make? And are they going to implement it? Are they going to drive it forward? Are they going to move forward with it? Are they going to be all in to make this work? Number two, that's faith. And then the third part is where we often get the paralysis, which is the fear part. And the fear part is, and I'll give you an example. I was just working with a big hospital system, and they had this piece of equipment that they needed. They had the data on the equipment. They knew it would save lives. The staff wanted it. In fact, some of them had gone out on their own and gotten trained up on this machine. But the board was wishy-washy, and it took them 18 months to make a decision.
Oh, wow. That's a little excessive.
Right. And people died in the meantime.
Oh, man.
By using this equipment. So, but the paralysis was, well, this is $1 million machine. This is a big expense right now. Right. And so we've got to get them past that fear of making that big purchase. So they got stuck on that. And our job is to help them see that they've got the knowledge, they've got the faith, make the purchase, because it's, you've got all the elements on this other side that are going to help it make it work, make it worthwhile, make the process that makes it less scary if you're paying attention to those other elements. So that's what we do. So we talk to companies, we work with companies on getting that knowledge, faith, and action in place as a cultural thing. And that helps people make those decisions.
That's awesome. Well, I love that knowledge, faith, and action, and then having a process. And those can apply to all areas, whether it's buying $1 million machine to save lives in a hospital,
Correct.
or it's your own life where you're in a relationship that isn't working and you need to have the knowledge or faith or action to do something about it, to make it better, or you're doing a startup, or you're looking to implement a new marketing program or cut costs. Those three things, knowledge, faith, and action, although general, are very specific to things once you look into them.
Well, and right. So if you know that those are the three elements of decision making, right? And you know where you're, so what happens now is people don't often know where they're stuck, right? So now if you put it to, do we have the knowledge? Do we have the faith? Is there an action plan? If you get stuck somewhere in this process, at least you know where you're stuck.
Right.
Exactly. And you can do something about that.
It's right? Like on a map when you're at a mall or a amusement park and you have the map and it says you are here. If you don't know where you're at, you can't know where to go to the next thing. So that assessment of knowing where you're at in those knowledge, faith, or action, or how deep you are or not in each of those categories is key. I'm assuming that you talk about some of this in your 2 books, and we're going to have a break here again in just about 1 minute. But Aaron, my producer who's on the show, Aaron, if we could pop up maybe Rhett's books before we sign off, and I want to talk about those when we come back. But this knowledge, faith, and action topic, and also working through entrepreneurial things. I know that Rhett writes about in his books, whether you're an entrepreneur, and I know he also coaches and consults with corporate companies and different organizations. These principles apply. So I think you have, what was the first book you had about frogs? It was a million frogs or something like that?
1 million frogs. It's a cute story about that. And I don't know if we have time, but that name came from a meeting. I was beating my head against the wall in the toy company. It was probably our first 5 weeks or 6 weeks of owning the company. We had 4 employees, and we were trying to do this sophisticated SWOT analysis of how we were going to move forward and what our challenges and our weaknesses and our strengths were. And it was just going completely over everybody's head. And now, these are folks that had never been asked in their lives what their bosses thought. They had never been asked, for help in trying to move a brand new company forward. And so, we were trying to use these sort of way over the top sort of consulting thing, tools. And I got kind of frustrated, and I kind of just said, you know what, guys, I wrote 1 million on the whiteboard. And I said, I want to sell 1 million frogs. Mm-hmm. And, lo and behold, that was a simple, clear, now they laughed their heads off, but it was a simple, clear goal of what I wanted, what we wanted to happen. Right. It was a clear goal. Let's sell 1 million of these kits. And you know what we did? We sold millions and millions and millions of them. That was beside the point. But it gave clarity to the mission, and it was an accident. It was out of kind of frustration. But that's the title of the book, and it was sort of our journey to get to 1 million is what that book is about.
Well, that's awesome. Well, 1 million frogs and clarity to the mission. We're going to come back and talk more about that. So if any of you ever felt like you jumping around with 1 million frogs, or one of my mentors, Brian Tracy, wrote a book called Eat That Frog. That's right. We're going to come back and talk more about frogs and clarifying your mission. So stay tuned. Thank you, Rhett. We'll be right back, everybody. Okay, Aaron, how are we doing? Aaron, are you there?
Oh,
there you are.
Is there?
Yep.
I think my internet just popped there for a second. I don't have any book covers.
Okay, I think we had the one. I thought I saw those images. I guess it's him reading a book.
Yeah.
And then we have his bio, his movement series, which we'll have.
I got the quit whining, do something.
Yeah, if we pull up his website, rhettpower.com, I think it's. I'd set the link for his website. We could just scan and show his.
I can put him in the. I can put him in the chat. I've got 2 of the book covers.
Yeah, that'll work.
What's that book you're reading there? Quit
whining, do something.
Whining, do something. Okay. Yeah.
Can you? Does it let you send it in the chat? It doesn't.
You know what? I don't think you can have. I don't think you can take. Let me just.
But Aaron, if you just Google rhettpower.com and then you could screen share his website, go to his book page or his tab on his website. There's his books there. You scroll down, he's got both his books on there.
Okay. Yep. I got her. Let me find them. Book covers. You want a sec, guys?
So we'll come back, Rhett, and talk a little bit more about both your books, and then I want to dig deeper on the contents of the books, and then we can talk about the concepts that come up from that and tie it into this knowledge, faith, and action. And then I want to then do a teaser for the show about saving the world, and then we'll come back about, and this is our third segment, and we'll come back with our final segment, which will be about 8 or 9 minutes. And that's where I want to get into higher purpose even more and the Iggy stuff and how you define your own IGI, inviting good in or inviting God in stuff. And we'll kind of have that be as our wrap up session.
Okay. And I will bring in the new book on the book segment.
Okay.
Give me one sec, guys. I'm just trying to get this up here. There we go.
Yeah. So just scroll. You'll see his tab that has Rhett Power, and then you'll scroll over to, I think it says books or and then
1 sec.
I think it's down towards the middle or bottom of his page on that book tab.
Okay, there we go. All right, just had to get it queued up correctly. All right, okay. 1 sec here. Right here.
There we go. Actions. Everyone wants to know about actions.
Okay. Great. How about that? Does that work for you guys?
Does that work for you, Rhett?
Sure. Perfect.
Okay. All right, guys. I will take Rhett and myself out, and then it's all yours, Steve. Okay?
Okay. Welcome back to the Alchemy of Business Show with Mr. Rhett Power. We were wrapping up the last segment talking about frogs, believe it or not. And we're going to carry on talking about frogs. The reason that came up is one of Rhett's books, it was called A Million Frogs. And he has another book about entrepreneurials taking action steps. So a lot of people on these shows, of course, want to know, what action can I take to make progress in my life or business? So we're going to talk about that. So we've got Mr. Rhett Power back. So Rhett, let's jump back in. And you were telling us before the break about how you were brainstorming with a client in a room, and you just kind of was trying to get their attention and wrote up, let's sell 1 million frogs. So let's talk about how the book came about, Million Frogs, and then let's talk about your other book as well, that's your more recent one about the action steps that entrepreneurs can take.
Okay. Yeah, no, the book came about because we were trying to sort of set the mission for our new company, Wild Creations. We had the staff in the room, and it was a young staff, mostly people who we could afford, and people who had never really been brought into and asked their opinion on how to make a product work or how to make a company grow. And so it was a ragtag team, but the whole thing was, when we wrote that 1 million frogs up when I wrote 1 million frogs up on the board, and people laughed and thought it was funny, but it clicked in my mind, at least, and I think for everybody else, that was our number. That was what we were going to shoot for. That was our goal. And it gave us clarity of purpose and goal. And we ended up selling millions and millions of them. And people didn't laugh so much, but it certainly did at the very beginning give us a little clarity.
And clarity is key. So when people, a lot of times I find some of the people I work with, they have clarity, but they don't know how to execute and take actions. And sometimes I have people that have really, really big dreams, but they're so broad, they're not clear about it. So as you were talking about in one of the first segments about knowledge, faith, and action, and how to determine when you're in those categories, how do you help people clarify, A, if their mission is big enough, and then getting clear on it? And then when and how do you help them start getting into this baby steps or the big steps about taking actions? Like, how do you help them decipher those things?
Well, it's got to be simple, right? We've got to start with simplicity. And if a goal is too complex, if it's too ambiguous, if it's too broad, and people don't quite understand how the things connect, then we always have to start in trying to simplify that and to get. I mean, just like 1,000,000 frogs up on a board, it's got to be that simple. Now, obviously, there are a lot of blanks to fill in there, but it's got to be something that clear, that simple, that understandable.
And then in the second book that you wrote, which is called Entrepreneur Steps, Action Steps for Entrepreneurs?
Yeah, Entrepreneur's Book of Actions, right?
Yes. So in that, what prompted you to dig deeper in? I mean, obviously, if you're going from 1,000,000 frogs, which is like, what the hell's 1,000,000 frogs, to then getting really specific, those tie really well in together now that we're talking about them. But how did you get into understanding that you wanted to write a book about the action steps in the book, and what were some of the key ones that you find people are lacking the most in taking action?
The book came about. It was really a book that I wrote. It was sort of cathartic to write because I spun my wheels as a new entrepreneur for a couple of years, and I got to the point where I wasn't exercising right, I wasn't sleeping right, I wasn't doing the things like I wasn't doing the hobbies that had made me really happy. I wasn't doing the things that made me me, and I wasn't doing life very well. I was very absorbed into the company, and we were also, as we were working in the company. We were driving the vans, we were doing deliveries, we were burning the candle at both ends. And at some point, we had this sort of genesis of, we got to stop, we got to take a time out. The business is getting sort of wits end because we're spinning our wheels a lot here, and we're not growing, and we're not moving as fast as we can. Why is that? That took us probably a year and a half or 2 years of sort of running and burning the candle at both ends, running a million miles an hour, to stop and say, what are we doing wrong? And we're running out of money. We're going to have to close this thing if things don't change. And what we realized was that we spent so much of our time working in the business and not on the business, and not playing our real roles in the business. As a president and CEO, I had a partner in this. We needed to step back, and we needed to be strategic. We needed to think big. We needed to do the strategic things, the sales part, the relationship part that we needed to do to grow. And when we stepped back and we did that, and we stopped driving across the country to deliver aquariums, and we stopped doing all those little things, and we brought some more people on, we trained people. Then we started to grow. Like, we instantly, almost within a few months, we had an account with Brookstone. We started to see this massive growth. We honestly, Stephen, in a 5-month period, we went from like $100,000 company to a $10 million company.
Wow.
And that just kept growing because we kept working on the business. And so I wrote the book to sort of talk about all those pain points that I went through.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Learning to say no, managing myself, the sleep and the eating and the health and the taking the time, stopping work at a certain time so that you can have, family time. And so this book is about those lessons that I learned that ultimately made me a better entrepreneur and a better leader, a better manager, and a better person. And so that's what Entrepreneur's Book of Actions is about. It's about those little things. And the book is unique in the sense that it's a 300-page book, but it's not something you just sit and read at one time. It's actually a book that you read every day for a year. And I give you this like little tidbit every day to think about and to work on. And I make you get your notebook out and write things down and analyze your actions and analyze yourself. And it's a book of actions every day that are going to help make you better as an entrepreneur.
That's awesome. So it's like a workbook, reading book, step by step, and apply. And here's on the screen for those that are viewing. You can see this. For those that are listening, you can, but you can connect with Rhett. We have one more short segment coming back on, but to make sure, if you're signing off early for any reason, Rhett is at rhettpower.com, and it's RHETT and then the word power.com. And you can see his books on there, The Entrepreneurial Book of Actions and The 1 Million Frogs. I'm sure you get those on Amazon as well. We're going to come back in just a few minutes, and we're going to talk about this multi-world of creation that Rhett does with doing good work and volunteer work in coaching, consulting, writing. He's also become a TV celebrity that we were going to talk a little bit about. And he's got this show that's going to be coming out very soon called 4 Days to Save the World. So if any of you want to find out how to save the world, please come back with Mr. Rhett Power, and we will be back here on the Alchemy of Business. Thank you.
And that concludes this episode of The Alchemy of Business with your host, Steve Rodgers. If you found value in today's broadcast, please consider liking, subscribing, sharing with friends, and leaving a review. Thank you so much, and we'll see you next Thursday for another episode. Be blessed and see you soon.